And you can, it gets that whole little area, so don't feel, I hope, just kind of forget about the camera. And we'll just kind of let that go. I have it plugged in and everything. And so officially, all right. Okay, I'm going to begin. Thank you again, Jay, for being here. Today is Friday, January 5th, 2018. And my name is Susan Kahlo, and I am with the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park in Kennesaw, Georgia, and doing the Veterans History Project on behalf also with the Library of Congress Veteran History Project in Washington, D.C. And today I am meeting with Jay Haney here at the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park itself. And I'll begin. Thank you for coming, Jay. And also, just let's begin by giving me your full name and rank of service. What was your highest, your rank, branch of service, and a little bit where you were when you began.
So Jay Haney, and my highest rank was Major, and my component was United States Army, and I went straight from high school to West Point. That's how I started my military career.
Okay. So from high school.
Yes.
And I'm gonna have you. I kind of know it, but the circumstances of how you ended up at West Point.
They were rather different. I was a National Merit Scholar, and my guidance counselor, I was from Raytown, Missouri, he recommended that I apply to the service academies, which I did apply to all three of them. And I did not get it. I got an appointment to the military academy as a fifth alternate, which meant that there was a primary and then there were 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I was a sixth man in line to go. So at the same time, I also applied to a number of other places, and I was accepted at a number of places. And I had selected Michigan State to go to study petroleum engineering.
Oh.
So I was packing my bags to go to Michigan State, and on June the 20th, I got a telegram from the Army saying you have been appointed as a cadet to the United States Military Academy. Please report on 30th of June, which is 10 days.
Wait, okay. 10 days before?
10 days before I was to report. So I think I thought about it a little bit and decided to take the appointment.
That's a shifting of gears.
No kidding.
And the fact that you got a telegram, was that delivered? No emails then?
It must have been delivered. I was not, when I came home, my mom had the telegram, so it must have been delivered to the house. So there's a change for you.
Yeah.
Definitely no email back then.
Otherwise you would have had it on
So this is June, this is 1965 we're talking about. A long time ago.
Okay. All right. So then you went into the military academy.
Right.
And for how many years was that?
Military academy is 3 years and 11 months. So I graduated in June of 1969.
Okay.
And at the time, everybody took virtually the same curriculum, so we were all graduated as Bachelor of Science, and you averaged 21 semester credits every semester, and it was heavy math, engineering. All of my electives, which were few and far between, were in military history.
Okay. Were you wanting what was going on? Were you wanting to be deployed, or what was?
Well, when you are there, you select which branch of the Army you're going to go to. So most cadets, there are a number of slots that are on this. You have a big ceremony where everybody gets to pick their slot. So it's not only a branch, but it's also a place. So and our mentality was at the academy was very much Cold War rather than Vietnam War. So I selected a slot in Germany in a tank unit. I was armored, and So,
Do
and
you remember?
some of the slots were in Vietnam, but
Do you remember? I mean, was the Cold War? So you were taught about it, or what was? How would you describe the Cold War to somebody now at that time, a 19-year-old?
absolutely, it was a worldwide struggle against communism, even at that time. I mean, it had been going on for 20 years.
Yeah.
So when I got there, so I in the whole 4 years, I had exactly one course on that dealt with what was going on in Vietnam. So that might show you the emphasis at the academy. The emphasis is on creating an officer who is a technologist. In other words, he knows engineering, he knows mathematics, and they teach us we can do anything. So that's kind of their mindset. You know, they're training us for a career, not for what's happening right now.
Okay.
In the Cold War, everyone pretty much expected it was going to be around our whole career, and as it turned out, it was.
It is.
Yeah, and maybe still.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we know that. Okay. Well, it's just kind of, and then, so when you were getting out and you put in for Germany?
I selected armor, and I selected a tank battalion in Germany, yes.
Okay. And at that time, did you have a family, or what was your...
I got married. I got married. At the time, everybody went to Airborne and Ranger School if they were combat arms. So I went to Airborne and Ranger School, and after those two schools, my wife and I got married. And so I was married when I went to Germany.
So were a lot of your other Army guys married?
Most of them.
So you were put into family housing when you went over? What was that like when you got... were you based in Germany?
So I went to Baumholder in Germany, and Germany at the time realized that the Army did have an emphasis on Vietnam. So most of the money and the troops and everything went to Vietnam because, you know, we had 500,000 troops there, and the Army was, you know, maybe 1.3 million or so. So Germany was understaffed. So a tank platoon, which my first assignment was in charge of a tank platoon, which has 5 tanks, and I should have had 20 troops. I never had more than 10. So we were always about half strength.
And what did you do? What would a day be like if you were on a tank platoon?
Well, let me circle back to didn't answer your question about housing, because that's where I was headed with that commentary. Since it was very under strength, that meant that the housing was underutilized.
Oh.
So we had a beautiful lieutenant colonel's quarters.
All right.
As a brand new second lieutenant. That's pretty cool.
Okay. So there was a benefit to that. So that worked to your favor.
That worked very well, yes. But a platoon leader of 5 tanks is 5 tanks take a lot of maintenance to keep them up and going. So they were old. I mean, we had M60 tanks. So by 1970, they were 10 years old. And think about your car when it gets to be 10 years old.
So was it it wasn't you weren't in an active combat zone, so you were more of a maintaining to be prepared?
Russians were just over the Fulda Gap. So we were there in case they came across. So I mean, if the Cold War, you know, we always planned as if the Russians were going to come tomorrow. I mean, that's how you have to get ready for them. So you have a training cycle where you have to learn, you know. And the other thing to realize is that it wasn't a professional army. So the people that you were getting were all recruits, and a tank gunnery is rather sophisticated art, so it takes a while to train a gunner, and then as soon as you got them pretty well trained, then they leave the service. Plus, you're also at half strength, so that means to get ready for tank gunnery, what would happen every year was you'd beef up the battalion, which is there's 3 platoons in a company, 3 platoons in a battalion. They would go to Grafenwehr to learn how to shoot the guns and everything, and you go at full strength. So as soon as you came back, they would take all your people away from you because they had to train another battalion.
Oh.
So it was sort of like musical chairs. You had no stability of crew at all.
Oh, that was constantly changing. Was it were you doing multinational forces? Were you with other?
Baumholder had a French camp, so there were French troops there. Germans had their tank driver training facility at Baumholder. So yes, we did
So you
do some
interacted.
stuff with them. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it? Was that
mostly it was on our own. It was,
yeah? So that's what I was going to ask on your free time. So since you have your wife and
well,
what
Germany is just a wunderbar. It's a great place. I mean, there's easy drive to Paris or any place else. Went on leave. We did a tour of the British Isles. I mean, it was good.
And what about perceptions, or how did the public treat the military?
The Germans were very, very appreciative of us doing the Marshall Plan and everything and rebuilding their country. So they were, even though we beat them in the war, they were just fine with us.
So how long were you there, and then what?
So I was supposed to be there for 3 years, but wound up I was there about 18 months, and that was because the Army recognized that Vietnam was drawing to a close, so they wanted to get their combat officers into combat. So that's when I got orders came down to send me to Vietnam.
So you went? Did you move from Germany back to the U.S. and then how did you adjust that? Make moves with a family? I mean,
well, when you don't have any children, which was the case, it's relatively easy to do that.
And your wife was working?
She was a GS-5 Army nurse. She worked at Neubrücke Army Hospital. Or she's an RN.
So the German time was a good part of your military career.
It was a very good part, and we were rich too.
Yeah.
The Deutschmark was cheap, and 2 salaries, so you were in pretty good shape.
Did you? Yeah, I guess. Did you travel back and forth to the U.S. or not during that time?
No.
When you got based?
If we'd have stayed 3 years, we might have, but
yeah.
we were just starting to think about coming back for a visit when I got my orders.
Okay. So then how about the transition from there, and then you got your assignment in Vietnam?
So then we came back to and we went to North Carolina to the advisor school, and it's about half Vietnamese language training and half lessons learned in Vietnam, because I knew I was going to be the orders came down saying I was going to be an armor advisor in Vietnam. And as far as the family situation, my wife went to stay with her parents while I was gone. And then she promptly got a job, and nurses, they could get, they always get jobs.
Could she pick? I was going to say, you can kind of pick where you want to be if you're a nurse.
Right.
So, and I'm interested to hear how your preparation then for Vietnam.
Right.
So was that your training, because you were a good student, you're a merit scholar and all that, but
right.
Was the training by choice, or did you have to make choices?
That was required.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a required advisor school. It was not very long though. We probably could have used a lot more, especially in Vietnamese language.
So so when you went back to do the training before
Right.
Vietnam,
Right.
and you had been in Germany for almost a year or 18 months. What was going on? What was the tone or mood in the U.S.?
When you're on a military post, which I was in both cases, you have no interaction with the public. I had I could see it in the newspapers that it wasn't good, but and certainly the German populace didn't have a problem with us. I was on a big army post in North Carolina, so I didn't interact with anybody.
Okay. So then when you went to Vietnam, let's get to that. And I know you have a picture here, so if you need to use it, we can hold that up at some point.
Okay.
About how that was. I'm just wondering again. You're going into now another environment, geographically, culturally.
Right. So I'm arriving in Vietnam in the fall of 1971. Okay. So drawdown has been going on for a while.
And explain what the drawdown is for someone who doesn't.
Okay, so in
That period of time.
it peaked probably around early '69, as I recollect. And at that time, there were over 500,000 U.S. troops in country. So that meant you had your advisory effort, then you had you had 10 divisions of combat troops. So all of those combat troops were leaving. And by the time I got there, all the combat troops were gone.
Oh, okay.
So the only people left were the advisory folks. And they were also being drawn down. So when I got there, I had my orders, and the slot that I was supposed to report to had already been drawn down.
So drawn down means moving them, getting them out of the battlefield?
Moving them out of country.
Out of country.
Right.
Okay. And then were they getting out of the military, or were they finishing?
Well, it depended. I mean, you know, they were being brought back. Some of them left, some of them stayed.
Okay.
But the Army was also starting to shrink. That most of that happened a little bit later on, but so anyway, they found another slot for me, and the slot they got for me was with the DCAS 60, which was the advisory unit assigned to the 9th Vietnamese Infantry Division, which in ARVN, 9th ARVN is what we would have called them.
And so what were your duties like? What was it?
So I went there, and of course I had no idea. You don't really know. Advisors are interesting because they're small units scattered throughout the Vietnamese armed forces, which is not small. The Vietnamese armed forces was 1 million people. Okay, so they had schools, you know, to train all of those people, and there were advisors at all those schools. You had the ARVN, which were the divisions, the main divisions of the ARVN Army, which were, I believe there were 10 of them. So there were advisors in that structure, and then you had the regional forces and popular forces, and those had advisors. And you also there were advisors at each province, 44 provinces, and each district. So all of those, you got advisors everywhere. So, but each one of them has a very different job. An advisor in I Corps up near the DMZ would have a very different job than my job would have been in the Delta in the South. So
you had a Vietnamese counterpart that you were
right,
working with.
Right. So the way we were organized when I got there was that we had a 5-man team and I was assigned to the 16th Regiment. So the 9th ARVN had three infantry regiments, and we had 3 regimental advisory teams, RCATs, and I was advised to the 16th. So we had a lieutenant colonel, Colonel Thompson, and myself. I was a captain by then, and we had 3 NCOs to basically man the radios and the like. So as soon as I got there, I was promptly sent to training in Vietnam because they had to train me to do my job, and the job was to be an air mission commander. And an air mission commander is the person who sits with the Vietnamese counterpart, who's the commander of the operation, in the back seat of the command and control helicopter, and help him organize the U.S. assets, because most of the operations we were involved in would have had Vietnamese infantry, and we would have had U.S. air asset, helicopter assets. And of course, you could call in fast movers, call in air power to help you. Some of that was Vietnamese, some of that was U.S. Some of it was Navy, some of it was Army.
How much time, when you were in a normal day, how long would you be possibly up in a helicopter, working out of a helicopter?
Well, I was in that job for 3 months. So we we got air assets probably every other day. And the colonel and I would take turns.
Mm-hmm.
So I was up every fourth day, say.
And then you go to the site, or what would you be doing?
Well,
Trying to get a sense of what you're.
Well, you have to. You've worked with the Vietnamese and you know what their plan is. Mm-hmm. And you're the air mission commander. So when the air assets report, you have to give them an operations order and tell them what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And once they know what they're going to do, they take over because they know what they're doing. They're really good, but they got to know what the mission is, where we're going, yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. So that's the main thing you do, and then the rest of it, you're in the back, and some of the Vietnamese were extremely competent, and every once in a while they'd send up a more junior person, and.
Mm-hmm. But you were working with a pretty senior. You were working with a senior person.
Regimental commander. Mm-hmm. So there's this green in the ears captain. I'm working with this guy who's been, he's 25 years service.
But was he? How was his attitude? Or did you have to use your Vietnamese at all?
He spoke better English, better French. I took French for 4 years. I didn't need to speak.
Did you enjoy that part? I mean, the interacting with him.
Oh yeah, that was great. And we worked on the plans.
Uh-huh.
We worked them through the whole cycle.
Mm-hmm. So there was a good, I guess, the camaraderie. I guess the way you worked was comfortable.
Right. Oh yeah, they're great people.
That's great. And
that was a very good regiment.
Mm-hmm. And so you were there 3 months.
3 months
doing that.
And I you never know what the Army's going to do. They just say, Jay, go there, and you go there. Jay, go to Vietnam. Okay, that's the way it works. You don't have there is no input for a young captain into where he goes.
Is that right?
He goes.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, after 3 months, they brought me back to division headquarters because they needed someone who understood what was going on to be a night duty officer. Okay, so the division tactical operations center. So I'm the night duty officer in that TOC, and so that's where the division is run out of the TOC. So that's where this picture comes in.
Okay.
So this is me. This is me going to work, and we are on the runway, the old Japanese runway at Rock Yaw, Vietnam.
This is a runway?
Yep.
With the shacks?
We're sitting on those are our hooches.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. They're hooches. Okay.
And so,
okay.
so these are some of them are living quarters, and down at the far end of the runway would have been the TOC. So they're made out of they're made by the Vietnamese engineers, and the corners are empty 55-gallon barrels full of sand, and the walls are empty 105 millimeter howitzer boxes, and the roof is pure steel planking, which is a runway material with sandbags on top, and then sandbags all around.
Was it warm? I mean, you have boots and helmet?
Oh yeah, it's warm in Vietnam, especially in the Delta.
Okay.
I would say hot.
Hot, okay. And then, did you have many uniforms? How was it?
That's the only uniform I wore in Vietnam.
How'd you wash it? Or did you?
How did we wash it? Well, we had hooch maids.
Okay.
Okay, and the advisors were assigned hooch maids, and your dirties, you put them out, and you come back, and they'd look beautiful.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have to do your own wash. That was
because
the locals did it.
The local. Generally, it was spouses of the soldiers. That was their job. They would follow the units around.
Of the Vietnamese soldiers?
Right.
Oh, okay. So that kept their families together a little bit.
They did. They tried. That was a plus and a minus.
Yeah, I guess so. And then also during that time, how did you how was communication back in the U.S.? How did you communicate with your wife or family?
U.S. mail. The APO system was quite effective. Don't ever send a chocolate cake through the...
Did somebody try to send you a chocolate cake?
Oh, yeah.
For your birthday or something?
I forget maybe St. Patrick's Day because it was green when I got it.
Was it mushed?
Well, it wasn't mush, but it was covered with green mold. So.
Oh, it took a while. Oh, that's funny. Well, so you had
In those temperatures, it probably didn't take long.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, with the packing stuff. That's yeah, looks like it was a good time. And that was the other thing. The people that you worked with in Vietnam? I mean,
Right.
if you were working with Vietnamese, did you form any long-term friendsps or?
Well, after the country fell, you lost track of everybody, so that was difficult. And you tended to. Well, the guys in 16th I worked with, I only worked with them for 3 months, so that's very short. And you kind of, there's kind of an attitude that, things are going to change and you don't have a lot, I still have good contact with my boss, the U.S. boss, because after I was my duty officer for a while, who was Colonel Major then, Haney was, his tour was coming up, and he was the intelligence advisor. So while I was sitting in the talk, at night, I would read about how to be an intelligence officer. He would give me all this stuff to read. So when he left, I took his spot. So the last 6 months, I was intelligence advisor.
Okay. Well, you mentioned also about you are used to you go where you're told with the Army. You don't.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have an input into it. Is that something? Did you ever have any difficulty with it? Like, I mean, did you have to hold any emotions or anger, or how did you feel not having the control over it? I mean, was it something you mentally
I think
equipped yourself with?
They must have trained us for that at West Point, because I do know that when I left Germany, my battalion commander definitely did not want me to go. He needed me. He didn't have anybody that had been there, so he needed me to stay, and he wasn't able to talk him out of it.
So it goes by rank, like the person who makes the decision.
Well, it's all done at the Pentagon Puzzle Palace. I mean, and they're managing thousands of officers, so they got things that they need to fill, and they got guys that can fill it. And
so when you were younger, though, it sounds like you said, maybe being at West Point prepared you for that, to just take an order and do what you need to do and not question it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never had a problem with that.
Oh no.
That's good.
No.
Some 18, 19-year-olds would, or 20-year-olds.
Well, that's why they get them at 19.
So they can mold them.
Exactly.
All right, so you did your Vietnam point. Where'd you go from there?
Well, I guess I didn't really finish what I did there, because the intelligence officer is a very interesting job, because you work with their intelligence people, you work with CIA, and there's a bunch of other folks flying around all trying to do intelligence work. So you're trying to figure out where the bad guys are. And one of our major assets, of course, especially by that time, was the B-52 strike, ARC-like strike. So part of my job is I was B-52 plans officer. So we would work out where we needed strikes, and of course it changed all the time because the enemy moves around, and your intelligence gets stale and the like. So we would send our requests up through Corps to Saigon, and every once in a while we'd get a strike.
Well, and what kind of, for someone who doesn't understand, what kind of information do you need to get to make if you're the B-52 plans officer?
Right.
What information were you getting? What's the process? What's going through your head? How do you make your decision?
We would get stuff from Saigon. We would get stuff from radio intercepts. We would get stuff from aerial photography. We would get stuff from the troops in the field. Maybe they'd capture documents. I mean, it was.
Was it intense? Was it with the pace of it? Did you have time to?
Oh yeah.
Consult and talk?
It was not intense. I mean, you had time to think about stuff.
Because it was towards the end.
Well, no, not that so much. Is just that the enemy's trying to keep you from getting intel, so he's trying to minimize how much stuff you got. So you're making intelligent guesses about where he's going to be. And sometimes the strike goes in, B-52, nothing happens because they're not there.
Okay.
And every once in a while it goes in and you get secondary explosions and they fire back at you. One of the things you do is you do what's called bomb damage assessment on the B-52. So the B-52 strikes, there's 3 aircraft in a V formation, and they're flying at 50,000 feet, and they each of them have a minimum of 60 500-pound bombs. So that's 180 500-pound bombs. And that basically turns a kilometer square into a big hole. And they're incredible weapons. So your bomb damage assessment is you're in a usually an air cavalry pack, and you're flying towards it, and you see the bombs fall in front of you, and then you go into the area and see what happened. And if the enemy's in there, they are going to take offense to you coming towards them, and they start shooting at you. And then sometimes, if you've got really good intel, you might hit an ammo dump, so when big explode, so you can really tell the main bombs go in, but they hit something and needing something bigger blows up. So that was, and then of course, the advisory network was, we didn't have communications capability above confidential. So, and all B-52 strike coordinates are secret. So once we decided that what the coordinates that we requested were, I had to get on an aircraft and fly it to someplace secret, so that they could then send it to Saigon and get it in the queue.
Oh.
So General Abrams is up there deciding who gets those B-52 strikes.
So it's a handoff and for security.
Right. And then you also have to notify the district commander and the province commander. They don't have secret either. So you gotta go to those 3 places. You gotta go to the district where it's falling, the province where it's falling, and Canto to give it to the Corps. And then now it's in secret, because you have people with secret clearances in those 3 places. You can give it to them.
And then, so you don't really know what or when they'll act with that information?
So now when they decide we're going to hit your strike and this is the daytime group, the same thing has to happen. It has to be flown has to go the other direction.
That's interesting. All this going on.
Because of clearance, because the North Vietnamese are listening to your radio traffic. You can't say, well, here comes the B-52 strike. You got to at least scramble it.
Yeah.
And if you can only have confidential, then you can't send anything secret.
Huh. That's interesting. That would have been an interesting.
And that's part of the intelligence advisor's job, is to make sure nobody's transmitting in the clear or whatever. It's real. It's not a game. I know. Well, that's for darn sure.
I know that there's they simulate this activity in some of the video games and all now.
Right,
but
right.
Anyway, that's a whole different thing.
So I leave. The war is really drawn to an end. So I leave in October of '72. The ceasefire was January 23rd, 1973. Okay. So when I came into country, and I came through, almost everybody who comes civilian aircraft into Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base outside Saigon. When I came in, it was a bustling place. Choppers and C-130s and a whole bunch of civilian aircraft there. And most people leaving, but there were a lot of stuff going on. So I go, and the place is dead. I mean, there was 1 aircraft a day leaving. All of the choppers had moved out. A lot of them had left. Certainly were no C-30s, but the airfield was just lined with equipment that we'd sent to the Vietnamese. Rows after rows of tanks, airplanes, helicopters, armored personnel carriers, just a whole airfield full of stuff. And I found that very striking.
It was just left for them.
Right. Well, that was part of before the ceasefire, we had to get everything in as far as much as possible. And they'd lost a lot of equipment in the April 72 Easter offensive, so we were replacing that equipment.
Were you allowed to take photos?
I did have, well, I have stuff like this. But I don't know why I didn't, but I took a few, but not very many. I could have.
I just wonder if that was restricted because what you're just describing that.
I may have quit taking photos when I realized I probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Once I became intelligence advisor.
That's what I was wondering. You're mentioning the intelligence part, but at the same time, even having the pictures is kind of cool. And then you describing about the having that image of all the American supplies.
Oh, it was just amazing. It was amazing.
That you look at. That must have been kind of surrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when you were leaving.
Yes.
Saigon. So
right.
You were there by yourself, waiting on a transport.
Waiting on the plane.
And
taking long showers because you had a good shower in 6 months.
Little hot showers and all that.
Right.
Did you have a what was it? I had heard your did get to meet the black limo that came through the.
Oh! Well, that was, of course, I'd met General Abrams earlier. He pinned my air medal on me, but then when I'm leaving, you see the advisors, everybody moved by chopper, so they got you by chopper as close as they could. So you got your 2 duffel bags, and you're sort of sauntering, heading towards supply. You got to turn all this junk in. So, and this limo pulled up, and I checked the date later, and he was actually there for a big conference with General Tu. He'd already moved on to be chief of staff, but he was there. So he pulls up, and the window goes down. And he says, "Where are you headed, son?" And I said, "Going home, sir." He said, "Take care." And off we went.
Well, they took the time. Were you the only one walking down the street?
Oh, yeah.
So you stood out.
Yeah. It was cool.
Oh, that was a kind of a neat thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Well, that's winding down from your Vietnam period.
So now Vietnam is over, and you go back home.
Good.
And I was assigned to 3rd Corps, which is at the time was at Fort Hood, Texas, and had a lot of leave accrued, so we took some time, and I think this was like we visited both parents, Kansas City, New York, and then reported right around Thanksgiving to 3 Corps, and I was put into the Corps 5 section, and 5 is community affairs. And in my job, I was in a section called Visitors Bureau. So we planned and escorted visiting general officers to Fort Hood. That was our job. So they came all the time because there was a lot of stuff going on at Fort Hood. And
It's a big place.
All these generals were flying in, spend a couple days, get all these briefings, fly out.
And what was the you said things changed also after that, because when you got out, I mean, as far as how just big changes that took place just in the military.
Well, towards, I'd say probably about a year and a half after I was back, they realized, well, Vietnam is over. Mm-hmm. They had grown the force too big for what they needed in peacetime. So they had what was called a reduction in force. Mm-hmm. So when they went through and they offered, well, actually they gave people bonuses to leave, and they really weren't allowed to decide if they wanted to stay or not. So a lot of people, we lost a lot of combat experience overnight because most of the people that left, officers in particular, the OCS officers didn't have college degrees, so they decided everybody who was an officer had to have a college degree. So they lost all those OCS officers, and most of them were combat veterans, so lost a huge amount of skill in just overnight. And of course, the same thing that was happening was they decided they were going to go all volunteer. So the changes to make that happen also were starting. So those are huge changes for an Army. And it's
Was
typical.
this impacting your plans? How did you plan your where your goals were or what your track was going to be?
Well, you know, when you're that age, you're very ambitious. So, you know, I made captain in 2 years, which wasn't extraordinary. That was normal. So you knew you were going to be a captain a very long time. Mm-hmm. So that sort of influenced me to leave the service. I was ambitious. You know, it's hard enough the Army's hard enough when you're not getting promoted.
Yeah. So now you're in one place. Yeah. And then how'd you and your wife at that point, what were your plans as a family together, and how did you find your first job? So
first we said, we're not doing this unless you have a job. Okay, so one of the things that I'd done at Fort Hood is I was custodian of the Fort Hood United Way. So I worked with the banker in town, you know, collected all the money, made the deposits. So I started to learn about banking. So banking, I found that interesting. So I took a week of leave and I went to Atlanta and got the Yellow Pages out, which I guess you can't get anymore.
I don't think so.
And picked out all the big banks in town and got interviews with all of them and left town with a job.
And that's what brought you to Atlanta?
And that's what brought me to Atlanta.
Okay.
Atlanta was picked because it was halfway between the families, the parents. And we'd liked Atlanta when we'd been there. We'd been through there when I went to Ranger and Airborne School.
Okay.
So that's how that happened.
So you had your career in the banking industry.
25 years.
That's great. And then you
but at the same time, I was still a reservist.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you were reporting in, you were still doing your...
Right.
Okay. Active reserves here, or not active, but...
Well, it was mostly a lot of individual ready reserve. Mm-hmm. And some of it was hard to find units. You know, the reserves also had been shrunk pretty good. Mm-hmm. So... Did you personally want to have a connection, maintain a connection with the military? Not at first, but later on, yes.
I mean, did you kind of miss it, or what?
Yes.
What do you miss?
So the reserve was the perfect balance. It was just enough, you know. It was 2 weeks in the summer. It was a weekend.
But what did you like? I mean, what was it that you would miss? What aspects of it?
Well, it's the discipline and working with guys that have the same kind of thinking, and we did have really important. We had a Germany mission, and quite frankly, I was pretty darn well trained by then. You know, most of your reservists aren't trained. You know, so I think I did them some good as a combat trained officer.
So you transferred So your training transferred to reservists who didn't have the kind of background you had.
I trained them.
Exactly. Okay.
So I would give classes and plan the field training exercises and stuff like that. And
what about what aspects of the military training or your background or mindset do you feel transferred into the banking industry or to your job?
Oh, it's all applicable.
Okay.
I mean,
you
know how to organize things. You know how to get things done on time. You know how to work with people.
Okay.
I mean, it works everywhere.
And now, your son is in the military?
My son is a major in the Air Defense Artillery. He's currently in South Korea.
Okay. Because your family's had quite a connection though with the military, right?
It goes back to the Civil War.
So, I mean, literally directly to the Civil War?
Yeah, we went. Okay. Our great back then was killed at the Battle of Iuka. Okay. So I think I said that right.
I'm not sure how that would go either. Well, bring it up to I appreciate it, but I want to wrap it up with you do work here with the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, and what capacity, and just again, how it transfers to here, how this physical location, because you put a lot of energy into helping here and years here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see, what connections do you see, or any with
Well,
military?
it's the military connection as well, and the Park Service is a service,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a very good volunteer program, which I'm a volunteer in Park, and I've been volunteering here for 11 years,
Mm-hmm.
and we the Trail Club, of which is a not for profit that I'm a member of. We started because there was a lot of maintenance work that needed to be done in the park.
Mm-hmm.
And then we still have a lot of people in the Trail Club that do that. But then, I guess in 2008, it was decided that we also needed a thing called a trail ambassador. And a trail ambassador is someone who sort of greets the people and walks the trails and makes people feel good about the place. So I was one of the original 8 trail ambassadors back in 2008. And from there, there have been just a whole lot of really good opportunities to work on significant events like the Field of Flags. I was in charge of that a couple times as far as the volunteers. I was in charge of the volunteers for the 150th. So that was a huge effort, a year-long effort, where we trained a huge number of people for that weekend. And so there have just been really good opportunities, all of which, my experience and other things.
It transfers pretty well. What about the public coming in here? Do you find, is there a connection, do you find, with the public that come here? Do you find yourself meeting other veterans?
I don't think, as you talk to the folks that are visitors, that comes up. Now, it might come up if they got a hat on.
Okay, all right.
And you might start the conversation, but it tends to be there. Most people are here for to use the amenity for physical
the historical
exercise.
significance, I guess that the fact that it's
only
a
about
battlefield.
5% of the people are really here for that.
Okay, so to get the outdoors, but you've kept active, and I can see where very clearly the training preparation that you got for the Army is applicable to civilian life.
Mm-hmm.
So would you give any advice to somebody right now today, some 18, 19-year-old?
Well, I have a grandson who's facing that decision right now.
Okay.
And we
I'll say this is real.
We talk considerably about what's it like to be in the. So if you have to tell them that it's not a bed of roses. I mean, it's don't believe what you see on TV or when you're.
Well, this will be for the record that your grandson can actually listen to.
Right. So he, there's an aviation unit that flies helicopters. Mm-hmm. So I took him on a ride on one of those, and we've talked extensively about what it's like. And his dad's Navy, so they've talked about that. So
you're okay with that?
Oh yeah, I can handle that.
Okay. Oh, I think that's fantastic that it sounds like generations it's a long line if they keep track of it. But anyway, I really appreciate it. Thanks, Jay, for participating in the Veterans History Project. And I will conclude our interview right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. So your grandson.
He's thinking about it.